3,747. That is the number of three-point field goals Stephen Curry has made in his NBA career and counting. To put that in perspective, the second most prolific three-point shooter in the history of the sport, Ray Allen, finished with 2,973. Curry did not just break that record, he lapped it. He made it look like it belonged to a different sport entirely, and he did it in fewer games. Allen needed 1,300 regular season games to set his mark. Curry shattered it in just over 1,000. But raw volume only tells half the story. Curry does not just shoot threes, he launches them from places on the floor that did not used to be considered shots. 32 feet out, 35 feet out. From the logo at half court, casually, as if he is tossing a crumpled piece of paper into a wastebasket. During the 2015 through 16 season, he hit over 400 three-pointers in a single year, 402 to be exact. The previous record was 286. He did not inch past it. He obliterated it by over 100. He is the only unanimous most valuable player in NBA history. Not Michael Jordan, not LeBron James, not Wilt Chamberlain, not anyone. Every single voter, for the first time since the award was created, agreed this man is the best player in the world. And in that same season, his Golden State Warriors won 73 games, the most in a single regular season ever, surpassing a record held by Jordan's Chicago Bulls for 20 years. Yet here is the part that makes the Curry story almost impossible to believe. He is 6'2". He weighs 185 pounds. He cannot dunk over anyone. He is not the fastest player on the floor. He does not have a 40-inch vertical. In a league built for giants, he rewired the entire sport's DNA with the most beautiful jump shot anyone has ever seen. So how good was Stephen Curry, actually? And did he really change basketball forever, or is that just hyperbole? Wardell Stephen Curry. The second was born on March 14, 1988, in Akron, Ohio, the same city, coincidentally, that produced LeBron James. But unlike LeBron, whose legend began with the physical gifts of a Greek deity, Steph's story starts in a very different place. His father, Del Curry, was a 16-year NBA veteran and one of the finest shooters of his era, spending most of his career with the Charlotte Hornets. His mother, Sonia, was a standout volleyball player at Virginia Tech. The genetics were there, but they came wrapped in a deceptive package. As a child, Steph was small. Not small for the NBA, small for his age group. He was the skinniest kid on every team he played for. He had the coordination and the hand-eye ability that clearly came from his father's bloodline, but nobody looked at him and saw a future professional athlete. He was the coach's son, the cute kid who could shoot, the boy who would probably play small college ball somewhere if he was lucky. His younger brother Seth would eventually grow taller and more physically imposing. Steph stayed slight, wiry, almost fragile-looking. Growing up in Charlotte, he spent countless hours inside the old Charlotte Coliseum watching his father work. He studied Del's shooting form obsessively, the way the ball rolled off the fingertips, the way the follow-through held like a frozen frame. But Steph did not simply copy his father's mechanics. Even as a teenager, he was experimenting quicker releases, deeper range, stranger angles. Del has said publicly that his son's range as a young player scared him a little, because no one shot from that far out with that kind of confidence. At Charlotte Christian School, Curry was a standout but a local one. He averaged just over 17 points per game as a junior. Impressive for a high schooler, but not the kind of number that sets off a national recruiting frenzy. He wanted to play for Virginia Tech, his mother's alma mater. They turned him down. He wanted to walk on at Duke. They were not interested. The two most prestigious basketball programs in his home state looked at him and saw an undersized guard who would get eaten alive by ACC competition. Think about that. The greatest shooter in the history of basketball was not good enough for Duke, not good enough for Virginia Tech, not even recruited by most major programs. Instead, Curry landed at Davidson College, a small liberal arts school in North Carolina with an enrollment of fewer than 2,000 students. Their basketball program was respectable, but it was mid-major, the kind of place where careers go to be quietly competent, not legendary. The head coach, Bob McKillop, saw something in Curry that no one else had been willing to bet on. McKillop gave him a scholarship and, almost immediately, the starting point guard role. As a freshman, Curry averaged 21.5 points per game. That is not a typo. A first-year student at a school most basketball fans could not find on a map was putting up numbers that would be elite at any program in the country. He scored 32 points against Michigan in the NCAA tournament, and suddenly, people outside of North Carolina knew his name. But it was his sophomore year that turned him into a folk hero. In March of 2008, Davidson entered the NCAA tournament as a 10th seed, a tiny school with no business scaring anyone. And then, Steph Curry happened. He scored 40 points against Gonzaga. He dropped 30 against Georgetown. He torched Wisconsin for 33. Davidson, this little school that nobody had heard of, was in the Elite Eight, and Curry was the reason. The entire country was watching a skinny kid with a baby face pull up from 28 feet and drain shot after shot like the rim was a swimming pool. They lost to Kansas in the Elite Eight, and Curry was visibly devastated. But the run had done something irreversible. It had proven that his game was not a mid-major mirage. He could do this against anyone. McKillop later reflected that Curry was the most competitive player he had ever coached, not because he was loud or demonstrative, but because he simply refused to accept that the ball would not go in. He has a pathological belief in his own shot, McKillop once said. It borders on irrational, and that is exactly what makes it real. After his junior year, averaging 28.6 points per game and leading the nation in scoring, Curry declared for the NBA draft. The scouts still had doubts. Too small, too thin. Can he create for others? Can he defend anyone at the next level? The shot is undeniable, they admitted, but the rest? Uncertain. On draft night in 2009, the Minnesota Timberwolves selected 2 point guards before Curry, Ricky Rubio, and Johnny Flynn back-to-back at 5th and 6th. Golden State took Curry with the 7th pick. In hindsight, it is one of the most lopsided draft steals in NBA history. At the time, it felt like a reasonable gamble on a shooter who might not survive the physicality of the professional game. His rookie season was promising but complicated. He averaged 17.5 points per game, made the all-rookie team, and showed flashes of the shooting that would later redefine the sport. But the Warriors were a mess, a dysfunctional franchise that had made the playoffs only once in the previous 15 years. And worse, Curry's body was already betraying him. The ankles. It always came back to the ankles. In his second and third seasons, Curry suffered a series of sprains that were so persistent, so debilitating, that real questions emerged about whether his career might be over before it truly started. He played only 26 games in the 2011 through 12 season. 26. The Warriors, unsure whether their investment would ever pay off, offered him a 4-year contract extension worth $44 million, a bargain that would later look almost criminal in its undervaluation. At the time, even that modest deal was considered a risk. ESPN analysts openly questioned whether Golden State was throwing money at a player made of glass. There is a famous story from this period. During a team meeting, a Warriors executive showed a projection of Curry's injury history and asked the medical staff, point blank, whether this player could hold up for a full season. The answer was equivocal at best. Curry was in the room. He heard every word. He said nothing. But teammates who were there later recalled the look on his face, not anger, but something quieter and far more dangerous. It was the look of a man building a list. He changed his training. He overhauled his diet, his ankle-strengthening regimen, his movement patterns. He worked with trainers who specialized in proprioception and balance. Slowly, painfully, the ankles stabilized. And when they did, the player who emerged was not just healthy, he was a completely different animal. The burst was back. The lateral quickness was sharper than ever, and the shot that had always been there, now had a body underneath it that could finally keep up. By the 2012 through 13 season, Curry was fully unleashed. He made 272 three-pointers at the time, the most in a single season in NBA history. He averaged 22.9 points per game. He led the Warriors to their first playoff appearance in years and nearly upset the second-seeded San Antonio Spurs, scoring 44 points in a breathtaking Game 1. The loss stung, but the message was sent. This was no longer a cute story about a coach's son who could shoot. This was a problem. A league-wide, keep-you-up-at-night, no defensive scheme can solve it problem. The transformation from very good to historically great required 2 seismic shifts. The first was internal. The second walked through the door wearing a coach's whistle. Under Mark Jackson, who coached the Warriors from 2011 through 14, Golden State had become a competitive, hard-nosed team. Jackson instilled toughness and defensive identity, and Curry thrived in the freedom he was given. But Jackson's offense was relatively conventional, isolation-heavy, predictable in the half-court, not designed to weaponize Curry's range the way it deserved to be. When Jackson was fired after the 2013 through 14 season, many players were upset. The locker room loved him. What came next, however, changed everything. Steve Kerr, a five-time champion as a player and a student of the beautiful game, took over and immediately installed a motion offense that treated ball movement like oxygen. Screens, cuts, off-ball action, pace. Kerr's system was designed to create open looks, and Curry was the nuclear warhead at the center of it. But it was not just about Curry. The pieces around him had matured at exactly the right time. Klay Thompson, drafted in 2011, had blossomed into arguably the second greatest shooter alive. Together, they became the Splash Brothers, a backcourt so lethal from distance that defenses had to choose which nightmare to live with. Guard Curry tightly, and Thompson would torch you. Collapse on Thompson, and Curry would pull up from 33 feet and break your spirit. There was no right answer. Then there was Draymond Green, a second-round pick from Michigan State who nobody expected to become anything special. Green was undersized for a power forward, could not shoot consistently, and lacked traditional star tools. But he could do everything else. He could guard all five positions. He could run the fast break. He could make the perfect pass at the perfect time. He was the connective tissue, the defensive anchor, the emotional engine. Curry was the magic. Green was the muscle. Andrew Bogut provided rim protection. Andre Iguodala, acquired in 2013, brought elite wing defense and veteran intelligence. Harrison Barnes gave them length and athleticism. Sean Livingston, rebuilt from a catastrophic knee injury that nearly ended his career, became the steadiest backup guard in the league. The 2014 through 15 Warriors were not a super team assembled through free agency. They were a homegrown masterpiece, built through the draft, player development, and a coaching philosophy that trusted ball movement over ego. And Curry, freed from the burden of carrying every possession, became something the league had never seen before. A point guard who could score from literally anywhere on the floor, while simultaneously making every teammate better. The mindset shift was palpable. This was no longer about individual dominance. Curry had learned, through the ankle injuries, through the early playoff exits, through the years of being doubted, that greatness was not about doing everything yourself. It was about being so good that you bent the entire game around your gravity, creating space and opportunity for everyone else. He became a basketball black hole, except instead of consuming light, he generated it. The 2014 through 15 season was a coronation the league did not see coming. Golden State finished with 67 wins, the best record in the NBA, and Curry won his first MVP award, averaging 23.8 points with incredible efficiency. The Warriors buzzed through the Western Conference playoffs, surviving a tough series against Memphis in the second round before dispatching Houston to reach the finals. Waiting for them was LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers. On paper, this should have been a mismatch, but not in the direction most expected. LeBron was still the best player on earth, and he had a personal vendetta. He had returned to Cleveland the previous summer with a single promise: bring this city a championship. Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love flanked him. Cleveland was dangerous. And then, in the cruelest twist of fate, both Irving and Love went down with injuries during the series. LeBron was essentially alone, dragging a gutted roster through the finals with a performance so superhuman it almost defied comprehension. He averaged 35 points, 13 rebounds, and 8 assists. He nearly won the series by himself. Games 2 and 3 went to Cleveland despite Golden State's overwhelming depth advantage, and suddenly the Warriors were facing a 2-1 deficit against one man and a collection of role players. This is where Kerr made the adjustment that defined the series. He inserted Andre Iguodala into the starting lineup, shifting to a smaller, faster, more switch-heavy unit that could bother LeBron on the perimeter. The Warriors ripped off 3 straight wins. Iguodala won Finals MVP, a somewhat controversial choice given that Curry had been the engine all season, but the trophy was in Oakland. For the first time in 40 years, Golden State was champion. Curry was happy. But something was incomplete. The whispers had already started. Did he really earn it? LeBron's teammates were hurt. Would the Warriors have won a healthy Cavaliers team? That question gnawed, and what came next was Curry's answer. The 2015 through 16 season was the most absurd individual campaign in modern basketball history. Curry averaged 30.1 points per game on shooting splits that looked like a video game glitch, 50.4% from the field, 45.4% from three, 90.6% from the line. The 50-40-90 club is considered the gold standard of shooting efficiency. Curry did not just join it. He did it while also leading the league in scoring, which is supposed to be mathematically impossible because volume and efficiency are meant to trade off against each other. He did not care about the math. He rewrote it. He won MVP unanimously, every single vote. In a league that includes LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Kawhi Leonard, Russell Westbrook, and a generation of transcendent talent, not one voter could justify putting anyone else first. And his Warriors won 73 games, breaking the all-time record set by the 1995 through 96 Chicago Bulls, a record that had stood for 2 decades and was considered untouchable. Curry did not just touch it, he danced on it. Then came the playoffs. Golden State blitzed through the first 3 rounds and arrived in the finals to face Cleveland again, this time fully healthy, with Irving and Love beside LeBron. The Warriors took a commanding 3-1 lead. It was over. Everyone knew it was over. No team in NBA Finals history had ever come back from 3-1 down. And then something happened that still haunts the Bay Area. Draymond Green was suspended for Game 5 after accumulating too many flagrant foul points. The Warriors lost. In Game 6, LeBron and Irving combined for 41 points each, pushing a 7th game. And in Game 7, in the final minutes, LeBron chases down Iguodala for the most iconic block in Finals history. Irving drills a 3 over Curry's outstretched hand. Cleveland wins. The 73-win Warriors blow a 3-1 Finals lead. It is, perhaps, the most devastating loss in modern sports history. Curry was gutted. The narrative flipped overnight. He went from revolutionary genius to the man who could not finish the job. The hot takes were vicious. He is a regular season player. He shrinks in big moments. He cannot carry a team when it matters most. It was reductive, unfair, and for a brief, painful window persuasive. What happened next was either the smartest or the most controversial roster move of the decade. Kevin Durant, the second best player in the world, signed with Golden State in the summer of 2016. The basketball world erupted. This was not fair. This was a super team. This was the death of competition. Durant, a 6'10" scoring savant who could get a bucket from anywhere on the floor, joining a 73-win team, the backlash was nuclear. But here is what gets lost in the outrage. Curry welcomed it. He did not protect his territory. He did not demand the ball. He willingly ceded touches, possessions, even the spotlight to Durant because he understood something fundamental. Championships are the only currency that matters. His ego was smaller than his ambition, and that is perhaps the rarest quality in any superstar athlete. The 2016 through 17 Warriors were a basketball apocalypse. They went 16-1 in the playoffs, the best postseason record in NBA history. They swept the Cavaliers in the finals. No, they dismantled them in 5 games, and the one Cleveland win felt like a technicality. Durant won Finals MVP, and again, the whispers followed Curry. Is he really the leader? Is he just a system player, elevated by talent around him? The 2017 through 18 season brought a repeat. Golden State swept the Cavaliers in the finals. Durant won Finals MVP again, and the narrative calcified. Curry was great, but Durant was the closer, the true alpha in the biggest moments. It was a bitterly unfair reading of the situation. Curry's gravity, the way he warped defenses, created open looks for others, and forced double teams 40 feet from the basket was the engine that made everything possible. But gravity does not show up in a box score. Then Durant left. In the summer of 2019, after tearing his Achilles in the finals against Toronto, Durant departed for Brooklyn. Thompson tore his ACL in that same series. The dynasty, it seemed, was over. Golden State plummeted. In the 2019 through 20 season, they won just 15 games, the worst record in the league. Curry broke his hand in October and played only 5 games. The fall was swift, total, and for many observers, final. 2 years of misery followed. Thompson missed the entire 2019 through 20 and 2020 through 21 seasons, recovering from his ACL and then an Achilles tear of his own. Curry carried the Warriors alone in 2020 through 21, averaging 32 points per game and nearly dragging them into the playoffs through sheer individual brilliance. He finished the season in the play-in tournament, losing to Memphis and then the Lakers. It was a masterful individual performance that led absolutely nowhere. And then, in 2021 through 22, the final piece of the Curry puzzle snapped into place. Thompson returned. A young core of Jordan Poole, Andrew Wiggins, and Jonathan Kuminga injected new energy. The Warriors found their rhythm, won 53 games, and Curry, at 34 years old, carried them back to the finals against the Boston Celtics, against the best defense in the league, against a young, hungry, physical team that had no fear of the Golden State mystique. Curry was sensational. He averaged 31.2 points per game in the series. In Game 4, with Golden State trailing 2-1, he erupts for 43 points, draining 7 three-pointers with the kind of ruthless precision that recalled his 2015 through 16 peak. The Warriors win that game, then win Game 5, then close it out in Game 6 on Boston's home floor. Curry is named Finals MVP for the first time in his career. The image is seared into basketball memory. Curry, tears streaming down his face, clutching the Finals MVP trophy, pointing to his ring finger. This was the one that mattered most. Not because the others did not count, but because this time there was no Kevin Durant, no asterisk, no debate. Curry was the best player on the floor in the biggest series of his life. The narrative was finally, irrevocably, settled. But behind the championships and the records and the smile that became the face of a franchise, there is a quieter story that rarely gets told. The ankle injuries in 2011 and 2012 did not just threaten Curry's career, they threatened his identity. He has spoken about lying in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, genuinely wondering whether he would ever play basketball again. Not at an elite level, at all. There is a particular interview from 2012, before the comeback, where Curry's voice cracks almost imperceptibly when he talks about watching his teammates play without him. "The hardest part is not the pain," he said. "The hardest part is feeling like you are letting people down, like you are wasting what you were given." Those are not the words of a man worried about a contract. Those are the words of a man questioning his purpose. His faith became the anchor. Curry, a devout Christian, has spoken openly about the role his beliefs played during the darkest stretch of his career. He did not treat his recovery as a sports project. He treated it as a spiritual test. Whether or not you share his beliefs, the effect was undeniable. When he came back, there was a calm in his game that had not existed before, a stillness in the chaos. He stopped fighting the moment and started trusting it. And then there was the 2016 Finals loss, which cut in a different way. The 73 wins, the unanimous MVP, the 3-1 lead, all of it gone. Curry has admitted that it took him months to process, that the loss haunted him, not because of what it cost his legacy, but because of what it cost his teammates. "I felt like I let them down," he said. "That is what stays with you, not the stats, not the takes, the faces of the guys in the locker room." That vulnerability is what separates Curry from the archetype of the invincible sports hero. He does not pretend the losses did not hurt. He does not wear armor. And somehow, that honesty makes the victories feel more earned. As of this moment, the final chapter of Stephen Curry's career is still being written. But even now, deep into his 30s, the absurdity of his talent has not faded, it has merely shifted shape. He is no longer the fastest player on the floor. The legs do not have the same bounce they carried in 2016. But the shot, that impossibly quick, impossibly pure, impossibly deep jumper, has not aged a day. In the 2022 through 23 season, Curry continued to average nearly 30 points a game, while passing Ray Allen's career three-point record in spectacular fashion during a game against the Knicks at Madison Square Garden. The NBA literally stopped the game to celebrate. Players from both teams stood and applauded. The Garden, a building that has seen everything, gave him a standing ovation. Curry held the ball above his head, grinning like the kid from Charlotte Christian who just wanted someone to give him a scholarship. Even diminished by age, Curry remains a problem. Opposing coaches still build their entire defensive game plans around stopping him, and he still routinely makes them look foolish. The release is too quick. The range is too deep. The movement off the ball is too intelligent. You can know exactly what Stephen Curry wants to do and still be unable to prevent it. That is the hallmark of a player who has transcended athleticism entirely. His game is not built on what his body can do. It is built on what his mind knows. Whether he wins another championship or not, the final act is already defined. He proved, with the 2022 title, that he could be the best player on a championship team without another MVP beside him. Everything from here is legacy layering another record, another all-star appearance, another moment where a packed arena holds its collective breath as the ball leaves his hand. Step back, take the full picture in. A kid from Charlotte, the son of an NBA journeyman, too small for Duke, too fragile for the skeptics. Overlooked, under-recruited, underdrafted. His ankles nearly ended his career before it started. He was told he could not lead a team to a championship. He was told Kevin Durant was the real reason for his success. He was told the 73-win season was a failure because of how it ended. And through all of it, through the doubt, the injuries, the heartbreak, the narrative warfare, Stephen Curry just kept shooting and making and smiling and winning. And 4 championships, 2 MVP awards, one of them unanimous. The all-time three-point record by a margin so vast it may never be approached. A Finals MVP to silence the last remaining critics. But the statistics, as staggering as they are, do not capture what Curry actually did to the sport itself. Before Curry, the three-point line was a weapon. After Curry, it became the weapon. Every NBA team now builds its offense around spacing and three-point volume, because Curry proved that the most efficient shot in basketball when taken by someone with his accuracy and range is an unsolvable equation. Youth coaches across the world changed their curricula. Kids who would have been told to stop shooting from that deep were suddenly encouraged to. The very geometry of the game shifted because of one man's belief that the ball would go in. Only a handful of players in the history of any sport can claim to have genuinely altered the way their game is played. Babe Ruth did it, Johan Cruyff did it, Dick Fosbury did it. Curry belongs in that conversation not just as a great player, but as an inflection point. The NBA before Curry and the NBA after Curry are fundamentally different sports. And he sustained it. This was not a 2-year peak or a flash of brilliance. Curry has been the best or second best shooter alive for over a decade. The consistency is almost more impressive than the peaks, because consistency requires adaptation. Defenses evolved specifically to stop him, and he kept finding new ways to be unstoppable. The question that always follows, where does Curry rank among the greatest players to ever touch a basketball? Start with Michael Jordan, 6 championships, 6 Finals MVPs, 5 regular season MVPs, the most dominant two-way player in history. Jordan's case as the greatest of all time remains the gold standard, and nothing Curry has done displaces that. Jordan operated in a different dimension. He combined scoring, defense, and competitive ferocity in a way that may never be replicated. Curry is not better than Jordan. That is not the argument. LeBron James, 4 championships across 3 franchises, the all-time leading scorer, a physical specimen who has sustained elite play for over 2 decades. LeBron's longevity and versatility give him a legitimate claim as the most complete player ever. Curry does not match LeBron's breadth of impact. Magic Johnson, 5 titles, 3 MVPs, reinvented the point guard position before Curry reinvented it again. Magic's vision and passing remain unmatched. Kobe Bryant, 5 rings. An offensive arsenal that was, pound for pound, the most comprehensive in league history. Tim Duncan, 5 championships, and perhaps the most quietly dominant career ever played. Larry Bird, 3 titles, 3 MVPs, and a basketball IQ that bordered on clairvoyance. These are the names in the conversation, and every single one of them deserves the reverence they receive. But here's where Curry separates. None of them changed the fundamental way the sport is played. Jordan elevated individual excellence. LeBron expanded what a single player's body could do. But neither of them forced every other team in the league to redesign their entire offensive and defensive philosophy. Curry did. The three-point revolution is not a trend. It is a permanent structural shift, and he is its architect. He also did it with the steepest physical disadvantage of anyone on that list. Jordan was 6'6" with a 48-inch vertical. LeBron is 6'9" and built like a linebacker. Shaq was 7'1" and over 300 pounds. Curry is 6'2", 185 pounds, and had ankle injuries so severe that his career was in genuine doubt at age 23. The fact that he became one of the 10 greatest players ever and the most influential offensive player since the three-point line was introduced from that starting point is almost incomprehensible. Is he the greatest ever? No. That throne still belongs to Jordan, with LeBron as the primary challenger. But is Curry the most transformative player in the history of the sport? The evidence is overwhelming. He does not just belong in the conversation, he reshaped the room it takes place in. Years from now, when kids are pulling up from 35 feet on a playground without a second thought, they will not remember where the habit came from. It will just be basketball. It will just be how the game is played. And that, more than any trophy or record, is the truest measure of Stephen Curry's legacy. He changed the sport so completely that the change itself became invisible. If you want to see the story of the dynasty that tried to stop him, check out the video on LeBron's Cavaliers and the rivalry that defined an era.